July may seem like a distant memory and Paris like another planet, but in a summer which has seen Great Britain take the Tour de France by the scruff of the neck, welcome to a week of proper road racing which will remind you of just why it is you love the sport. In September 2009, I think it's fair to say, cycling is coming home. The Tour of Britain is cementing its place in the national sporting calendar, growing year on year in both style and substance. Over 1 million spectators turned out on last year's events to watch as the Peloton flew past, and they were rewarded by a race which pretty much had it all. Big names. Alessandro Petacchi, the great Italian powerhouse, rode out sprint wins which bookended the Tour in London and to huge crowds in Liverpool. Big breaks. Ian Stannard was one of a number of riders who struck early for home and very nearly went all the way. Big prospects. Edvald Boasson-Hagen blasted his way to 3 stage wins, relatively unknown then, the very hottest property now. He's back for more this time. Big wins. Geoffroy Lecatre wore the yellow jersey all the way to the end, fending off a huge challenge from Britain's Steve Cummings. Both of those men too do battle again. Okay, well, we'll be having a look at some of the main contenders shortly, but first of all, to introduce this man stood next to me. Graham Jones is the veteran of 5 Tours de France and he's the route director of the Tour of Britain. Graham, 2008 was a cracker. How are you going to improve on that?
Well, we've improved the race every year from 2004 when we resurrected the race. It's sort of grown in days, number of days. We started off with 5, we're now up to 8 days. The level of competition, the teams that are entering and the teams that want to race in the Tour this year is we've been overwhelmed really. We've got 8 teams that have ridden the Tour de France this year, and also the riders that they've sent in those teams is brilliant. And I think we're going to see a great race. I've got a feeling that I'm hoping to see a British winner this year. We've got nearly all the main British riders that are racing in continental teams in the event this year. Just probably the one lacking is Mark Cavendish, but that's not to be. But I think it'd be great to see a British winner, and we've got a level of help on the race now from the regions, so the understanding in how the race runs, and every year that's for me is the most important thing that the race is getting.
And you've had a word with someone upstairs about the weather as well, because I tell you what, it tipped down on us most of last year, didn't it?
It did, and it was unfortunate. It was a decisive stage as well. It made a great stage, but hopefully I'd rather see weather like this, because it does make the race so much more colourful. Okay, well, weather aside, let's have a look at what awaits the riders over the next 8 days of the Tour of Britain. So this is how the week stacks up. Stage 1 rolls out from Scunthorpe to loop round for a finish in York. After that it's north from Darlington to Newcastle Gateshead on Sunday. Scotland next from Peebles through the borders to Gretna Green, then back over the border, starting and finishing on Tuesday in Blackpool. That's the halfway point. After that it's Staffordshire and a circuit around Stoke, before hitting the southwest with Frome to Bideford, followed by the penultimate stage from Hatherley in Devon to Yeovil. It all finishes in style next Sunday with the city centre circuit along the banks of the Thames in central London. Well, if you've studied the map, you'll know that there's 1 or 2 familiar places where the Tour has been before, like Newcastle Gateshead and Stoke, but new venues as well, Graham, that's important. Yeah, well, obviously we want to change the route every year. We've got 1 or 2 routes that are the same as or similar to last year, but we've brought in new venues in Scotland, Peebles, Gretna Green, and also in the southwest, Frome to Bideford stage, and then a little tiny village of Hatherley to Yeovil. So yeah, we're trying to change the route every year. We don't want to get things stay boring.
Absolutely, and of course that big showpiece finale in London is one to savour. Well, so much for the route. Let's have a look at some of the riders. There are any number of headline acts to watch out for among the 100-strong Peloton, but with our Union Jack tinted sunglasses on, it starts and finishes, of course, with Bradley Wiggins, Britain's Olympic hero turned Tour de France contender. His 4th place in the summer, as great an achievement as Britain has ever mustered. Look out for defending champion Geoffroy Lecatre's Agri-Tubel team. He's supported by Brice Fayou, a brilliant prospect who won a big mountain stage on this year's Tour de France. Colombia have arrived with a monster team, featuring Team Sky's star signing Edvald Boasson-Hagen, the hugely versatile Norwegian who is one of the emerging talents in world cycling. British interest is supported by the presence of last year's runner-up Steve Cummings, Olympic team pursuit champion Geraint Thomas, both of whom are joining Sky, and Team Katusha's Ben Swift, whose third place on stage 2 of this year's Giro d'Italia tells you all you need to know about his potential. Well, of course, all the excitement and the chatter in the world of cycling at the moment is about Team Sky and who they may or may not sign. And Graham Jones, a number of the riders who they have signed are on the Tour of Britain, the likes of Thomas Löfqvist, Chris Froome, Ian Stannard, and of course Russ Downing.
Yeah, I'm really pleased for Russell. I think he's 31 now. I was always one rider that I've liked, and I thought he always should have been in a Pro Tour team, really, riding on the continent. And I'm so pleased that he's got his chance, even at the age that he is. He won the Tour of Ireland this year, what looked like a phenomenal ride. So yeah, I think he's up for it this week as well. Yeah, beating Lance Armstrong is no mean feat. But Bradley Wiggins, he's the name that will feature throughout this week, I'm sure. And who knows, maybe we might see something emerge in terms of his commitment to Sky or otherwise over the course of this week. Yeah, I hope so. But I think the main thing for us is that he's actually participating in this year's Tour. Hopefully he's in good form. It would be great for the British race if he was to win it. And certainly everybody will be looking to see him do well, I think. Yeah, there'll be plenty of time to speculate and pontificate over Team Sky and all the shenanigans that are going on there over the course of the week. But for now, let's get on with the racing. Join us after the break. Welcome back. Now, it's not often you get to use the phrase Grand Départ and Scunthorpe in the same sentence, but actually I just have. It all gets underway over 172 kilometres, which loop through Lincolnshire and up into Yorkshire on an average pace. They're looking at about 4 hours 20 in the saddle. The rollout from Scunthorpe leads the way into a couple of sprinters' hotspots before the climbing legs get a little loosened, but nothing in the profile should split the field, and if no breaks get away, expect a bunch sprint into York. Yorkshire, countryside which in standard guidebook parlance you might describe as craggy, home to industrialists, dreamers and show-offs. The race will skirt plenty of places to take your mum and dad for a cup of tea before we all turn and kick towards York with all that place has to offer, none of which, by the way, will mean anything to the riders who'll only catch a glimpse of the place through beads of sweat and acres of lycra. They've all been through the old city at one time or another, the Romans, the Vikings, but now it's the bunch. Well, I'm joined by Gary Verity. He's the Chief Executive of Welcome to Yorkshire. Gary, it's a huge honour, isn't it, for this area to get the whole thing underway today?
Oh, it's a massive honour. It's the first time that the race has started in Yorkshire with the first leg, and we're really pleased. Here we are in North Lincolnshire, starting off a fantastic opportunity for us and a great honour. 100,000 people will line the route today and will finish off in the great city of York. So we're really pleased. And what it says is that Yorkshire and Humber is a serious place to host major events like this. Yeah, big crowds, as you say, knowledgeable too. This is big cycling territory, isn't it? Massive cycling territory, a big Yorkshire interest in the race, local competitors taking part, and we're quietly confident of a good result as well. Gary, thanks very much. Well, the final adjustments have been made. The riders have signed on and made their way down to the start. Let's get the racing underway. Here are your commentators, Hugh Porter and Anthony McCrossan.
Thank you very much indeed, Ned. Glorious conditions for the start of the Tour of Britain. Stage 1, Scunthorpe to York, 107 miles, the second longest leg of this round Britain Tour.
Well, there in the centre of the picture in the green are the Italian squad of CSF Navigari. The Italians have won 11 stages since the Tour of Britain started, and this is, of course, the 6th edition of the race.
Well, you're looking at riders on the front here from the Garmin Slipstream team, and they've come with a very, very strong squad indeed, led by Bradley Wiggins, the man that finished 4th in the Tour de France. But just look at the crowds, they're absolutely massive. Just like the Tour de France, they're out here to cheer these riders on at the start of the Tour. And of course, they're right behind the British contingent, and there are a lot of superstars from Great Britain taking part in this particular race. We've got Wiggins, as I mentioned, and I think that this fellow will be out to try and stamp his authority on the race.
Well, the weather conditions are absolutely perfect. It's just over 20 degrees centigrade, not too much wind. There is Stephen Cummings in the red.
And Cummings finished 2nd in this Tour last year. He wasn't far away from the yellow jersey, and that of course is Geoffrey Lacat of Agritubel, and he's wearing race number 1 at the moment. And there's one of the members of the Agritubel squad in those blue jerseys, and they're out to try and clinch a hat-trick of victories, because Roman Fayou was the other winner up there in Glasgow a couple of years ago when he sealed the overall win.
Well, the pace nice and steady right now because the riders are neutralised. It's a rollout as we see the Agritubel rider going through the picture. There is Russell Downing in the pink shades over beside Brad Wiggins, the winner of the Tour of Ireland.
And he's in the form of his life and has just been given a place in the new Sky team. Wiggins, well, taking it nice and steady at the moment. No doubt talking about the possibility of the final outcome in London for this Tour.
Well, Brad Wiggins yesterday was down in Southampton with his Garmin sponsors, took some of the riders from the company out on a ride and now moved up to Scunthorpe for the stage start. Well, there is the peloton looking down on them. Fantastic helicopter shots. We're getting close now, Hugh, to kilometre 0 for the race start proper.
And that will be a blue pennant on the side of the road, and that always indicates the start. There it is. Kilometre 0, so the red and white neutralised flag has been pulled in, and now the race is on. Riders from Columbia there on the left, and Columbia, remember, with a very strong team in this race. They've got Bosenhagen and Lokvist and Martin, Kirshen, Dox and Montfort. We can expect them to be playing quite a significant part as this race begins to unfold. Steady at the moment, but as I speak, look at this, an attack already on the right of our screen, and this is number 5, this is Bryce Fayou, a member of the Agritubel squad, trying to go clear.
Bryce Fayou stamping on the pedals here, the stage winner in the Tour de France this year, and the brother of Romain Fayou, the former winner of the Tour of Britain.
Well, Fayou's effort has come to nothing, and it's because of the effort of the Garmin slipstream rider who persisted in pulling him back. So the field, once again, are back together. And it is Garmin slipstream at the moment with a stranglehold on the head of this main peloton, and we are really only in the very early stages.
Well, it's really fast out here. Look at that, one long string of riders, and now more riders just turning up the heat on this climb.
Little climb here, just lipping up, and a big crowd on the side to encourage the riders. And this is beginning to look promising here. These two are starting to go away because the field has sat up. They're not too bothered about chasing them down.
On the front there, in the white and black from the Top Sport Vlaanderen team, is Thomas de Gent, who is a rider that was tipped last night by Tim Harris, the former British road race champion and one of the race directors, as a young rider we should watch out for this week because he was 10th in the Eneco Tour time trial just a few weeks ago. There is Brad Wiggins again, de Gent and Mortensen on the attack.
And I can also tell you, Anthony, that de Gent won a stage in the Tour de Wallonie. And Mortensen, well, he's a pretty good bike rider. He's not a bad time trialer either. He was in the top 10 of the National Danish Time Trial Championships. Well, there's the caption to confirm our call. And these two riders are now setting about distancing themselves off the front of the main field.
Well, we're right in the centre of the peloton with those pictures. Absolutely fantastic shots as we see the rider from the Top Sport Vlaanderen just talking into his race radio, communicating with his team director just to find out if this gap's starting to open.
Well, I reckon the manager will say, listen, I'm happy with this development. You continue at the front because at the moment the field aren't too bothered, and this is a chance, of course, for them to make a name for themselves.
Well, on the front is Mortensen, and the first sprint of the day is just on the horizon.
You may notice here that the two riders are happy to share the workload, and as they want to try and distance themselves from the main field, they may just roll across the line and share the points as the stage unfolds. And at the moment it is de Gent looking quite comfortable, tapping out a nice easy rhythm.
I'm just thinking about the previous performances of Mortensen, and he won the Duo Normand, which is a 2-up time trial in the north of France at the professionals ride, so he's probably quite at home in this duo here.
Heading on towards the line here, let me just tell you, it's 5 points to the first rider over, 3 to second, 2 to third and 1 to fourth. And across the line first it is de Gent, so he gets the 5 points. And also the first 3 over the line actually gain time because the winner gets 3 second bonus, second gets 2 and the third gets 1. So that's an indication of the ideas in the head then of these two riders in the early stages. It was Thomas de Gent over the line first and Mortensen second, and the field, well, they're not too bothered.
Well, they'll be heading now to the sprint point. I just caught a glimpse of the Irish road race champion in the white and green, Nicholas Roach, another rider we might tip for overall victory. Heading to the sprint now with a peloton.
And Roach had a fantastic Tour de France as well, getting up in the top 3 or 4 on a couple of stages. This looks like Bosenhagen to me, the man that won the sprint competition last year. He's out to try and get early points. It is the talented Bosenhagen. Oh, the Norwegian crossing the line. It was tight, but I reckon that Bosenhagen got third there, and that will give him points and of course the 1 second that is still available.
Well, it's good to see Bosenhagen on form, because he said at the start that he's been sick in the last couple of weeks, so the legs must be good.
Yes, confirmation of the results. You can see De Gent got the 5 points, Mortensen 3. Bosenhagen got the 2, and the 1 went to Christoph. A long way to go yet. Join us again after this break.
Welcome back. Now, it is railway country, but what would you not want when you're 73 kilometres into a race which you lead by nearly 13 minutes? Well, a closed level crossing would come pretty high up on your list, but Thomas De Gent and Martin Mortensen found themselves held up by the 12.23 to York until the barrier went up and off they went again, losing nearly 2 minutes to the bunch. So as we join the racing, they're approaching the second sprint in Pocklington.
Well, the Tour of Britain is going to pass by in a few moments' time, and that's a perfect opportunity for the school kids to get let out to watch it.
Well, we're looking here at the Peloton, and you'll notice many of them are taking food on board. They've got their musettes with all sorts of different foods to nourish them and keep the energy levels up. It's 1 kilometre to the next sprint of the day.
And that's at Pocklington, and they'll have covered 65 miles when they arrive there. And these two are looking pretty comfortable, and they've got a big lead, and you really have to start to speculate about whether they can hang on to the finish.
Well, that's the big question. Of course, as you remember, the stage is, I guess, a game of 2 halves, really. They've been on very flat, exposed roads for much of this stage, but in a few moments' time, the roads are going to go and start to go upwards, and very heavy roads as well.
Interesting to see that the team of Columbia have started to appear at the front of the main field. Maybe they've had a chat and decided that these two have got enough lead, and maybe it's about time we started to lift the pace.
But you've really got to speculate for the sprinters teams here how long they leave it before they start to bring this race back together. It's all about a gamble, really. They normally can calculate how long it's going to take them to catch the leaders, but if they do leave it too long, then these two guys will race into York. They'll take the yellow jersey, and they will have an advantage into tomorrow.
Occasionally that does happen, but I just cannot believe that these will be the two that we will welcome across the line at the finish in York.
Well, we're heading here to the sprint as the riders race through Pocklington. There's the line.
Finishing order exactly the same as sprint number 1 in Forest Pines. That means that Thomas De Gent was up there first for 5 points, and Martin Mortensen second for the 3. Look at the crowds on the side of the road here. They really have turned out, haven't they, in their thousands.
We've really captured the imagination with the Tour of Britain, but now the riders, having been on flat roads, as we've said already, any moment now are going to head to the first King of the Mountains at Kilnwick Percy. It's a climb of 1.1 miles, and it's just a little bit of a taster because the second climb is almost 3 miles long. The pace in the peloton increasing, the gas is being turned up.
And both those climbs, actually, Anthony, are rated as second category. So it means that over the line first, the rider will get 6, and they go all the way down to 1. So it'll give us an idea who are the contenders for the King of the Mountains jersey.
Well, thinking through the peloton as well as to who are climbers, you've got many riders who'll be just have focused on the King of the Mountains. There's the sign on the left-hand side, that red sign that signifies the start of the first climb of the day. And these two riders look like they will stay away to the top of it.
So Kilnwick Percy, the first climb, and the road beginning to ratchet up a little bit here. And they're both out of the saddle, dancing on the pedals, looking across at each other. And it's beginning to look as though Mortensen is the man that fancies his chances to get the points over the top. But the Columbia squad are also beginning to turn the screw here. and the line is beginning to thin out a little bit again.
Well, the pace certainly is much, much higher. They have started to ignite the peloton to try and bring this race back together. Mortensen, he's normally known as a time trialist. He was 4th in the World Under-23 Time Trial Championships, but he's making short work of this climb. And look at the crowd. We've said it before, but they are all out and they're enjoying the racing.
And the applause is resonating here around this Yorkshire climb, and it gets even thicker at the top. The crowds have massed there, and so the road will narrow down between them, just like the top of a mountain climb in the Tour de France.
Well, if we think about how long these two riders have been in the lead at the top of this hill, then they will be in the lead as a duo for 63 miles. Those legs are going to start to hurt soon as everyone urges them to the top of the climb.
There's nothing better, is there, to get such support as this. It really does lift you, and you can see ahead the signs on the side of the road. That tells us where the line is and the summit. It's getting ever nearer. They're not going to sprint for it, and it's going to be a reversal of the positions where they've been finishing in the sprints. It's Mortensen, the Dane, that will take the maximum points, and Ghent getting second.
Well, we're going to go over the top of the climb, and there's a plunging, quite technical descent off this first climb of the day, so they've got to be a little bit vigilant as we see the peloton starting to hit the bottom of the climb too.
That was Russell Downing, actually, we saw just at the head, and there is the result confirmed for you of the sprint. Christoph coming over the line 3rd, and Riemer coming in 4th.
Well, Martin Reimer is the German road race champion, so we'll try and pick him out as this duo, who are a long, long way ahead now, over 10 minutes, are over the top of the climb and heading to the next sprint at Wetwang.
And they are enjoying their escape, these two, making a real fist of it, but I get the feeling that this lead is going to start to tumble, and tumble pretty quick when the big teams decide that they're going to start to play seriously.
Well, there is the view in the middle of the peloton as we see Carlos Scognamiglio there, number 14 from the Barlow World Team in the red. And there's Martin Reimer, the German champion we were talking about, on the left-hand side, just at the side of the picture, and the Halford squad also near the top of the climb for the peloton.
Well, here are the field just crossing the summit of the climb. Tom Southam got 3rd, Graham Briggs 4th. Well, earlier today, Ned spoke to Geraint Thomas.
Well, Geraint, it's been a kind of tough season for you, hasn't it? Because it barely got going and then it was over almost.
Yeah, well, I crashed mid-March, so kind of started racing in February. So yeah, I had a month under my belt and then crashed out, fractured my pelvis, broke my scaphoid in my hand. So didn't really get back to full fitness till July, really. So yeah, it's been a bit of a more down than up season, but I'm going all right now and just looking forward to getting stuck into racing here. It's always good to come back and, you know, see the old faces and race on home road. So I'm looking forward to it.
Now, of course, the big news is, as if we didn't know it already, you're going to be joining Team Sky. That's official now. A last hurrah, if you like, for Barlow World, and then off into a bright new future. It's all coming together nicely for your new team, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Just the whole buzz around, you know, the Sky team being around for a while now, and yeah, just every time you go into the velodrome, you see Dave or you speak to Rod or Shane, or it's just been getting bigger and bigger, you know. And now, you know, riders are being announced, and it's only a few months away. It's just the buzz is just phenomenal, and yeah, everyone just can't wait to get going. But like you said, yeah, it's last couple of races now for Barlow World, and like to pay them back. You know, they supported me really well on the track. You know, let me go off and do my Worlds and my Olympics and whatever. So yeah, it'd be definitely nice to pay them back with a win. So that's the plan anyway.
Geraint Thomas, a man who won a gold medal in Beijing as a member of that Team Pursuit squad that set the world record, and looking forward to riding in the new Sky colours.
Well, he certainly is, and there's much motivation about that squad as we see the peloton still upping the pace all the time. And right now, the gap is starting to come down. It's around about 10 minutes. So they've still got plenty of an advantage. It's not over for these two riders yet as they head towards the sprint in Wetwang. That's got to be my favourite place name of the race so far.
And the points, remember, 5, 3, 2 and 1, so it really doesn't matter in which order they cross the line here, because Thomas de Ghent will be the man that will mount the podium at the end to collect the jersey as the leader for the intermediate sprint competition. He's amassed 10 points so far, so he's got a 4-point advantage over his teammate companion.
Well, the race today is 107 miles, and these riders, of course, in the hot weather are going to have to keep hydrated as we head towards the sprint line.
Here they come. And that's sprint number 3 tidied up in Wetwang. I just love that name. And across the line first was Thomas de Gent, so he's had a full house. He's amassed 15 points ahead of his breakaway companion there, Martin Mortensen.
Oh, in the peloton, there's Brad Wiggins looking pretty comfortable and quite cool in his mirrored shades right now. Just keeping vigilant. The Garmin team, they've got their sprinter in the squad as well. So they're really looking to try and just set things up. But they have had a couple of problems. You'll notice there, ripping the shorts, and one rider feeling a little bit of pain after crashing earlier.
Well, Wiggins has announced that he will not be competing in the World Road Race Championship. He's focusing totally on the World Time Trial Championship. And with the kind of form he has got, he's got a brilliant chance of getting a medal at those World Championships. Now then, we're at the foot slopes of the next climb, and this is Scunthorpe Wold, another second category affair, and this is much longer than the previous one.
This climb is 2.5 miles, and it goes up in steps here, Hugh. So you think you've got over the top, it flattens out a little bit, then it kicks up again. So it's the sort of climb that kind of shatters the morale a little bit, because you're thinking, oh, I'm at the top now, and then you're not. But the pace for the peloton certainly increasing. It's noticeably faster here.
It's all about measuring your effort then on this climb, and I'm just wondering now how much longer these two are going to stay out in front. Fatigue is now creeping into the legs, and the shoulders are beginning to roll a little bit. That's always a telltale sign that they are getting tired.
Well, they certainly are, and de Gent is the rider on the front in the white jersey that we just saw, the shoulders rocking side to side, and he is starting to feel a little bit tired. We're heading to the sprint for the peloton now.
And this is the gallop for third, and it is actually Russell Downing that got that in good form. Christoph coming over the line for fourth to get the one.
Well, it's interesting. Russell Downing, everyone's been saying, is he really going to have the form after the Tour of Ireland and all the contract negotiations to do well in this race? But maybe there's your answer.
Well, getting towards the summit then of this second climb, Scunthorpe Wold, and they just went over the line in the order that they're actually working. So it means that Mortensen crossed the line first, as he did at the top of Kilnwick Percy. So he's amassed now a nice amount of points, 12 in fact.
Well, this gap is coming down, as we've said already. Their maximum advantage was 12 minutes and 43 seconds, as Columbia at the front, Garmin, Slipstream and ISD are represented.
That's Thomas Lundqvist, the man that was pedalling away at the front of the main field there. The Swede, a very talented bike rider who does excel in the stage races. He had a good Tour of Italy and Tour de France. Just look at the way the field is stretching out here.
You wouldn't want to be anywhere near the back, or you'll just get shelled out under the pressure of Thomas Lundqvist, another rider who's signed for Sky, and as you mentioned, Hugh, he wore the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey of the Giro d'Italia earlier on in the season. A real talent.
Hugging the curve very, very tightly there, and the long, thin line reinforces my earlier comment that the pressure is being applied on this long ascent, and this is where time can be taken back in big chunks on the leaders. They've crossed the line, and it was Lundqvist that was still at the head. Southam of Great Britain's having a good day today, coming over fourth, and Bradley Wiggins for the first time showing his colours, crossing the line fifth.
Well, these are the two leaders. Let's not forget about them. There's Mortensen on the front, and de Gent, their advantage is starting to come down over the top of the next climb very shortly.
And that'll be Galley Gap, and that is not as severe as the previous two, and it means there are 25 kilometres of racing left to tidy up this opening leg.
Well, importantly, we go over Galley Gap, and then we race down the other side, and we go into very narrow roads, actually, Hugh. So the riders have got used to riding on these nice wide roads, and suddenly the terrain is going to change on the run into York.
Just wondering how many riders are going to lose contact by the time we do get to the line. There has been a crash, as you pointed out earlier on, so there are 3 or 4 stragglers, but the bunch still looks pretty compact to me.
Well, we've got in this peloton 98 riders, the 2 riders up the road here, 17 teams and 17 different nations represented. The top of Galley Gap beckons.
And it's Mortensen, the Dane, that comes over the line first, so he's had a full house on the climbs, just the same as De Gent did in the sprint. So that means it'll be Mortensen that will collect the polka dot jersey in York as the early leader of the King of the Mountains competition.
Well, there's the telltale sign that this pace is being increased. The arrowhead formation at the front of the peloton, and there are many teams represented. Rabobank in the orange and blue, Barlow World in the red, Columbia in the white and the yellow. So the teams of the sprinters are starting to really up the pace now.
And they are ratcheting up the speed here as they get near to the line. Remember, there's still points available. It was close, wasn't it? Well, it was Southern that was over the line third. Powell's coming over the line for the 1 point in fourth spot.
Well, Serge Powell's had a good Giro d'Italia as well, so on form again.
Well, we've got about 20 kilometres to go to the finish. Let's take another break. Well, welcome back, and these are still the two leaders, but they're looking back because they know that the peloton is beginning to close down on them rapidly, and they shake hands. They've decided to capitulate. They've had a good day out there, these two. The one will be the King of the Mountains and the other will be the leader on the sprint competition. But there come the field, and they're closing them down.
We're in these narrow roads that we talked about after Galley Gap, as the two riders are now absorbed by the peloton. The story of their breakaway, 12 minutes 43 seconds was the maximum advantage, but over the last 15 miles this lead has really tumbled down. It's now Katusha in the white and blue on the front of the peloton, maybe trying to set things up for a Ben Swift win.
And just for the record, Martin Mortensen and Thomas De Gent were ahead for 98 miles. That is a pretty impressive breakaway. But now all these riders beginning to concentrate on the run-in to the line.
Well, let's see who is lined up as a possible winner of today's stage. We think through the various sprinters in the different squads. We've got Russell Downing of Candy TV Marshall's Pasta, Nicholas Roach of AG2R La Mondiale, riders like Graham Brown, Chris Sutton, Ben Swift. There's so many sprinters in here who now think, right, we can win this stage.
You are right there. Pizzato is a very, very fast finisher. He won that wet stage a couple of years ago in the Tour of Britain that finished in Sheffield. But just thinking back to the performance today of Martin Mortensen, the Dane, it reminds me of Martin Pedersen, who in 2006, who is also from Denmark, he slipped away on the first stage that took the riders down to Castle Douglas from Glasgow, and he actually won the stage, and he ended up in yellow at the end of the Tour.
And he is, of course, the only Danish winner of a stage of the Tour of Britain and the overall since the race began. Look at this, the pace really starting to increase, and we talked about Pizzato, Katusha on the front. Filippo Pizzato, the Italian champion, was on the front there, and we talk about their sprinters. They've also got in here Danilo Napolitano, the powerhouse from Italy.
He is quick, but Ben Swift is equally as quick. He had one or two very, very good stage finishes in the Giro d'Italia. And let's not forget also that Ben Swift is a former winner of the King of the Mountains in this Tour of Britain race, and he's in this event with very good form.
I'm also thinking through the sprinters. We haven't seen the squad or mentioned them yet in the orange colours from the Basque Country, and we've got Coldo Fernandez, and he's a fearsome sprinter. He likes to bump and barge a little bit, could get a bit dicey.
Yes, the ingredients are very, very spicy indeed, and there's a lot of riders here teeing themselves up for a tilt at victory on the line. The last time actually we finished in York was back in 1998, and on that occasion it was the Australian Stuart O'Grady that took the sprint to the line, just beating John Clay.
Well, look at that on the left hand side. We mentioned the orange clad team of Euskaltel Euskadi as they now try to surf their sprinter Coldo Fernandez up towards the front to get onto the right wheels. But Katusha, the Russian squad, they're led by that man Dmitry Konishev. You'll remember him, Hugh, a fantastic bike rider who's got a great head on him for tactics, a real expert, and he's guiding his charges to try and win this race.
That's right. Konishev was a man that finished second twice in the World Professional Road Championship, and he will certainly have a game plan in the closing stages here. It is a big field, and the finishing straight is very, very long indeed. It is absolutely perfect for a mass bunch finish.
Well, there are riders moving left and right up through this peloton. It's very, very important. Let's just think through the tactics, what the team's doing. We've got used to the Columbia team riding the train for Mark Cavendish. Is they look around, they look for their sprinter, they put 2 or 3 riders in front of them, they try and line it out at 30 to 35 miles an hour, take control of the front, and then lead their sprinter to the last 200 metres. That's what the team of Katusha in the front are trying to do.
Echeloning across the road here using the full width. This of course is permitted with the road closures, but it is, as you say, Katusha on the front at the moment that are dictating the tempo, and the rest are quite happy to sit back. And let's not forget teams like Columbia have got Bosenhagen, who himself is a very sharp finisher.
On the front there is Vladimir Karpits, the Russian rider, one of the tallest riders in the peloton on the front. They're just working their way through, taking the turns, increasing the pace all the time, and the other squads look at the moment like they're quite happy to let Katusha do the work. Just notice Martin Reimer moving up there for the Cervelo test team, and I'm just thinking through who they might try to bring towards the front for the Cervelo test team. You never know, might be Dan Lloyd, the British rider.
Well, Ben Swift is just near the front as well from the Katusha team. Comes from Rotherham, 22 years of age, Swift, and he was 4th in the World Under-23 Road Championships last year in Varese in Italy. He's had a fantastic first year in the pro ranks, and he really has made his mark.
Well, I said to him this morning, you know, what is it like to actually ride in Britain? He said, I've been based in Caranta in Italy all year, and it's very unusual to actually be talking English for once. But he speaks 4 words of Russian now.
Well, that's very good indeed. I should imagine good morning is 2 of them, and that's Dobry Utra, and you obviously knew that. But there we are, 5 kilometres to go to the finish. That's just 3 miles, and there are 1 or 2 other riders now beginning to force their way through to the head of the field.
The luminous colours of the ISD Nieri team, they're looking to try and bring through their sprinter as well. So Columbia with Tony Martin, I just noticed him glancing across a white jersey in the Tour de France. He tried to bring the Columbia train up, and if you look, they're all on the left-hand side of the peloton. They're looking for Bosenhagen.
And of course that ISD Neri team, that contains Ian Stannard, another British rider who will be out to try and stamp his authority on the leading positions in the GC. Finished 3rd overall last year.
Well, the Barlow World team now moving up on the right-hand side. We've heard Geraint Thomas say that he'd desperately like to win something to repay Barlow World for the faith they've had in him. I'm thinking who's possible they could be bringing through to the front to try and win this stage.
Well, they've got young Michael Merlo, an Italian. He's a neo-prof, so obviously he's in his first year in the paid ranks, and I can tell you he had some pretty smart performances as an amateur. He is a good finisher.
Well, we'll see whether he comes through to try and take the victory as a little bit more injection of pace happens over this bridge. We've got great closed roads on the run-in to York. Of course, there are time bonuses on the line as well. There's 10 seconds. So really, it's all about who takes the sprint win as to who will take the yellow jersey.
10 seconds for first, 6 for second, and 4 for third. Now, the Candy TV Marshals Pasta squad have got 1 or 2 sprinters there because they've got Russell Downing, the former national champion who has recently won the Tour of Ireland. He's in top form. And then there's the old warrior himself, Malcolm Elliott, 48 years of age, but he can still he can mix it with the best.
But don't discount Graham Briggs. He won a round of the Tour Series earlier on in the year. He's a rider who's about exactly the same height as Russell Downing and really can power through. But here they come. Columbia now on the front with Tony Martin, and the pace has been injected by the team who know how to set the train up better than any other squad in the world.
Well, of course, we're quite accustomed to seeing the long line of the Team Columbia looking after the interests of Mark Cavendish, but this time I think they're going to be looking after the interests of Edvald Bosenhagen. He's a fast finisher, 3-stage victories to his credit last year, but of course they haven't got the strength of that big lead out, but they've still got enough power there to make a dent in the top places.
So we're looking across this great countryside as as Tony Martin just concentrates on keeping this pace as high as he possibly can. Look at that, a little bit of a grit of the teeth. This is hurting now at the end of 107 miles, a tough stage in the sunshine, and Martin slightly out the saddle, not too windy, but a slight headwind here as he tries to keep this pace going.
And he seems quite happy to keep the pressure on, and there's a massive crowd in the finishing straight waiting for the arrival of these riders. But now then, Columbia take over the pace setting at the front, and they've got nobody else in the wheel to lead out, so I don't think this is going to come to anything.
Well, it might have been that they've mistimed us. Look at Vladimir Karpis sitting there in second place, looks very, very comfortable. The big-thighed Danilo Napolitano sitting in third place.
And right in the wheel of Napolitano is Ben Swift, so they are setting it up very nicely for the young man from Rotherham. Swift sitting in the wheel of his two teammates. So now then, Canteen Katusha nail this first stage.
Well, I think, judging by your little nomination there, Hugh, that you think Ben Swift is the hot tip for this stage victory. Not putting words in your mouth or anything, but look at this. The Peloton in full cry now.
Ben Swift is an extremely talented, versatile rider. There was almost a touch of wheels there, but good correction by these professionals. Swift, of course, comes from a track background, so he's got a fine apprenticeship under those wheels where he learned to ride on the bank tracks. Now, there's the sign over the road that tells us there is 1 kilometre to go to the finish.
There we are. We'll get used to this over the next 8 days. They'll go under the red kite, the blue banner across the road. 1 kilometre to go. It's all about the sprinters as Garmin now take a little bit of control of the front of the race. And of course, they've got the sprinter in here, Chris Sutton, who Brad Wiggins has tipped for a possible stage win during this race. There goes Cattell on the right-hand side in orange.
Well, Chris Sutton, his nickname is CJ, and of course he comes from a cycling family. His father, Gary, was a world champion for the points discipline. Now then, Chris Sutton is in the mix as well, but it's Barlow World beginning to start the lead out here as we're getting ever nearer to the line.
This is going to be a furious finish, a big bunch cavalry charge for the end of stage 1 of this year's Tour of Britain. It looked to me like Barlow World starting to take control. Who's going to try and win this stage? The sprinters are absolutely flying now. Here we go.
Getting ever nearer to the line now. Remember, I tipped young Merlot for Barlow World. Now then, here they are. They're getting closer and closer to the line. It looks like the colours of Garmin Slipstream. Oh, it is CJ himself. Chris Sutton, the Australian, takes victory on the line there. It was tight, though. I don't know about second and third. It looked like Ben Swift in the shaker. He's the overhead. Yes, it's definitely Sutton that's going to take this. He's got about a body length advantage on the line.
First blood then to Garmin, who've had their fair share of second places this season, but Chris Sutton edged out the rest to take the win. It was a team effort involving their team leader.
About 1.5 k's to go, Bradley went straight round the outside, dropped me off at around fifth wheel, and I just sat there and he just smashed it till about 800 metres to go, and then peeled off. So he kept the pace high, so no one was going to swamp it, come around us. And I was just sitting fourth wheel, fifth wheel. Pretty much felt really good, just picking my nose basically.
Then he got his finger outs and came in first. 2 better off than his third place on stage 2 of last year's tour. Excellent placings too from Ben Swift, whose Katusha team mean business, and Tour of Ireland winner Russ Downing in 4th. Right up there in his young career, this win, a result which will delight GB cycling coach Shane Sutton, who just happens to be his uncle. Thomas de Gent swept up all 15 points to lead the way in the sprints competition, with Russ Downing and Edvald Boasson-Hagen, soon to be teammates, nibbling away at the minor placings. And what de Gent gained on the flat, Mortensen carved up on the lumpy bits. The polka dot jersey, his consolation for a long, hot day in the lead, which was not without incident. It was a big lead. At one point it was 12 minutes plus.
Yeah, and then we have to stop for a train, so we lose about 4 minutes there, so that was a bit the same.
And the jersey, will you now try and defend it?
Yeah, we will try, but it's difficult.
But the first yellow jersey of the tour sits on the shoulders of Chris Sutton, courtesy of the 10-second time bonus, which came with the stage win, presenting him with a familiar dilemma for the rest of the week.
Whether I can keep the lead all the way to London, that'll be a dream come true, but if not, I'll definitely go, one stage win isn't enough for me, I'll definitely go for 2 or 3 or even 4.
So for now, Chris Sutton leads the way. Barlow World's Mikkel Merlo is at 4 seconds, along with Martin Mortensen. Ben Swift and Russ Downing are at 6 and 9 respectively, the same time as Edvald Boasson-Hagen, who tore into this race last year. He's back in 7th. Then there are 85 riders at 10 seconds, including Ian Stannard, returning champ Geoffroy Lecatre, Geraint Thomas, Steve Cummings and Bradley Wiggins. Halford's Rob Hales was one of 6 riders, though, who crashed out early and lost over a quarter of an hour. Well, brilliant sunshine, huge crowds and an Australian winner. They've got to win something this summer, I suppose, haven't they, Graham? It was just about everything you wanted to see, wasn't it? A bunch sprint and had it all.
It was. I'd planned it so well.
Well done.
I just wanted a bunch sprint today. A nice, safe race and great crowds and great weather, and I think it was a fantastic finish to the stage.
Chris Sutton. What do we know about him? And he's wearing yellow. I mean, he's a sprinter and he's looking for stage wins. But is he the sort of rider who could sort of, if you like, nerdle his way through to actually defending the yellow jersey and wearing it all the way to London?
I think there's a possibility there, yeah. I mean, Chris maybe has not been in this position before, but we know he's a good all-round rider. So there's every chance of that. But I've just still got a feeling that Bradley Wiggins, they started chasing that 2-man breakaway, and I think the team obviously had that more in mind than they had the sprint finish.
So it's still a possibility that Bradley Wiggins means business and we'll see him show on this Tour of Britain.
I'm hoping so, and that's what we're looking for.
That's what we're looking for indeed. Well, we'll do it all again tomorrow when the Tour of Britain moves to the top right-hand corner of the country. It's Darlington, and then we finish in Newcastle Gateshead. Don't miss it. See you then.